They gave my son a card that said you're nobody on Christmas morning, but what he left behind made them wish they'd never written it. When your child hands you a handmade gift wrapped in reused tissue paper and says, "I made one for everyone, even the ones who don't like me very much," something in you stills. That's what my son, Jonah, said to me on the evening of December 23rd as he gently placed a shoebox on the dining table. He's 10, soft-spoken, thoughtful in ways that sometimes feel too old for his age. And this Christmas, he'd been working on something quietly, cutting up old construction paper, collecting scraps from magazines, folding bits of cardboard like little secrets he couldn't wait to give away. Inside the box were 7 small, slightly lumpy packages, each one carefully labeled. "I made one for everybody at the Prescott's house," he told me, matter of fact. "Even Grandma Dolores." He didn't say it with sarcasm. He said it like it was his responsibility, like he was trying to give them something better than what they'd given him. We live in Evergrove, Vermont, in a narrow 2-bedroom apartment that always smells faintly of cinnamon and dish soap. I work mornings at Whitmore Property Group, where I answer phones for agents selling homes far more beautiful than the one Jonah and I live in. But we manage. And this year, Jonah hadn't once asked for toys. Not even when he saw ads for them between his cartoons. Instead, he asked for printer paper, glue sticks, and time. That was the first clue. Before we go further, don't forget to like this story, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss what happens next. I asked him if he was sure he wanted to give something to everyone. Even Jason, his older cousin who'd once pushed him off a sled and told him he was too soft to hang with real boys. Even Dolores, the kind of grandmother who told me straight-faced last year that boys raised without a father get delicate. But Jonah just nodded. They don't have to like me. That's not what gifts are for. And that's when I knew this child had more wisdom in his bones than most adults I knew. The Prescotts, my late husband's side of the family, were the kind of people who believed in keeping up appearances. They hosted Christmas like it was a press conference. Gifts were tallied like trophies. Emotions were expected to be moderate, if present at all. And Jonah? Jonah felt everything. He was sensitive, quiet in crowds. The kind of kid who lingered by the window to watch snow fall, who said thank you even when you didn't give him anything. He didn't fit their mold. And over the years, they made sure he felt it. That night, he laid out the packages on the table like relics. One was tied with a red shoelace. One had glitter glue writing on the front. Another was sealed with an old sticker from a cereal box. I pointed at the largest one, wrapped in faded blue tissue, edges uneven. "Who's that one for?" "Grandma Dolores," he said. "What's in it?" "Something I wrote." "Can I see?" He shook his head. "You'll know after she does." He went to bed early. I found his sketchbook on the floor next to his backpack. Just one line was written across the last page. "You don't need to be loved by those who never learned how." It was unsigned. Christmas morning came cold and silver, the air heavy with new snow. Jonah dressed himself in his best, a white button-up shirt, sleeves a little short now, and navy pants he insisted still fit. He looked at me in the mirror before we left and said, "No matter what happens today, I'm going to be proud." We walked to the Prescott's house through slushy sidewalks. I held the umbrella. He carried the shoebox. Inside, the usual scene unfolded. Angela was arguing about table placements. Dolores sat on her antique armchair, sipping from her signature teacup. Jason was shouting from the living room about his new VR headset. No one said hello to Jonah, but he greeted each of them by name and handed them a wrapped package from his box. They barely looked up. Dolores took her blue-wrapped box with a wrinkled brow. "You made this?" she asked, voice flat. "Yes, ma'am," Jonah said. "It's from me." "Well, I hope it's not more drawings. I told your mother those aren't real gifts." He didn't blink. "You'll know what it is when you open it." And that was that. We stayed for 20 minutes. Jason unwrapped 2 new game cartridges while Jonah sat politely on the edge of the sofa, unopened gift in his lap. Dolores didn't touch hers. She placed it on the side table like a coaster. Then, finally, Jonah turned to me. "I think I'm ready to go now." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." He stood, looked around the room one last time. "Merry Christmas." No one responded. We left in silence. Snow fell again. Halfway home, Jonah turned to me and said, "Even if they didn't like it, it's okay. I'm in it anyway." That night, after dinner, as I was washing dishes, my phone rang. It was Angela. Her voice was tight, panicked. "What did Jonah put in that box?" "I don't know." "Why?" "Because Dolores is in the den crying, and she hasn't done that since 2002. She opened it? She read it. And then she just folded up. Did she say anything?" "Only this." "How did he know?" Angela hung up before I could ask more. I walked to Jonah's room. He was already in bed, lying quietly beneath his quilt. I sat on the edge. She read it, I whispered. He turned his head slightly. I know. Do you want to talk about it? Not tonight. Okay. I kissed his forehead, and before I stood up, he said something I will never forget. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is tell the truth when no one else will. Angela called again the next morning. This time, she didn't bother with small talk. Dolores hasn't eaten. She won't come out of her study. She keeps staring at that letter like it's going to erase itself. I didn't ask what it said. Not yet. I just asked, is Jonah okay? Of course he is, Angela snapped. He's the one who caused this mess. I hung up and felt the chill settle in. Because when people like Angela say mess, what they really mean is, we got caught being who we are. It wasn't until that afternoon that I heard from Mark, Angela's husband, usually as emotionally expressive as a lampshade. He sent a text, short and strange. Did Jonah write that himself? I didn't reply, because what answer would satisfy them? Yes, my 10-year-old son wrote something honest enough, sharp enough, and quiet enough to crack the shell around a woman who hadn't cried in 2 decades. Yes, he did it without malice, without profanity, without even raising his voice. I finally found out what the letter said from Jonah himself. We were sitting in the park. A rare warm spell had melted just enough snow that the benches were usable again. He was feeding pigeons pieces of cracker, watching them flap and squabble. I asked him gently, "You okay?" He nodded. "Did you want me to know what you wrote?" He was quiet for a while. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a folded paper. A copy. He had made a copy. Not for revenge. For memory. It read, "Dear Grandma Dolores, I know you don't like me very much. You don't have to say it. You show it with your eyes. When I speak, you look away. When I give you something, you put it down fast. But I still wanted to give you a gift this year. Because I know what it's like to feel invisible. And I think maybe someone made you feel that way once. I think maybe someone made you believe that kindness is weak, or that silence is strength. But silence is just loneliness wearing a mask. I don't want to be like that when I grow up. So I wrote this letter to tell you, I forgive you. Not because you apologized, but because I don't want to carry this sadness around with me forever. If you think I'm worthless, that's okay. One day, someone will love me loud enough to drown your silence. But if you ever wonder why your house feels colder every year, it's not the weather. It's what you've chosen to be. Love, Jonah. I read it twice, then folded it and held it to my chest. He just kept feeding the birds, as if he hadn't just peeled back a century of family rot with one page of handwritten truth. Back at the Prescott house, Dolores hadn't moved much. Angela said she kept muttering, "He forgives me. He forgives me." Not with relief, with disbelief. Because people like Dolores didn't expect forgiveness. They expected fear, distance, silent endurance. But Jonah had given her something scarier, clarity. The fallout came in waves. Jason, the golden grandchild, the favorite, apparently read the letter, too. Mocked it. Called Jonah soft. Then, according to Angela, he asked a question that knocked the wind out of her. If he's so soft, why did it hurt so much to read it? Mark, who rarely said anything beyond sports commentary, quietly put Jonah's gift, a hand-drawn comic strip of him as a superhero realtor, on his office desk. I know, because Angela texted me a photo. No caption. Just the image. That night, Jonah came to me while I was folding laundry. "Is it okay if I don't go back next Christmas?" "Of course. Even if they invite us?" "Even then." "Okay." He nodded like a decision had been made, not just about the holiday, but about them. The next morning, I received an email. From Dolores. Subject line. I read it again. No greeting. No apology. Just one line. When he said the house felt cold, he was right. The box sat unopened on Dolores's side table for over 24 hours. Angela said she tried to toss it out at one point, claimed the wrapping was cheap, said it wasn't worth keeping. But Dolores had stopped her. No outburst. No speech. Just a quiet hand placed over the tissue paper. He said I'd understand once I opened it. That's what Angela later told me. So, at 5:43 p.m. on December 26th, the time is noted because Angela couldn't stop repeating it to me later. Dolores opened the box. She thought it would be more of the same. A drawing. Maybe a poem. Something innocent and sweet she could brush off with a patronizing "how thoughtful." But Jonah hadn't put sweetness in that box. He put memory. And once Dolores opened it, she finally saw what she had spent years choosing not to. The box contained a thin, hand-bound scrapbook. The cover was plain construction paper taped together with glue and staples. Across the front, Jonah had written, "What you missed." Inside were pages filled with drawings, notes, and clipped scraps of his life. One page was a picture he'd drawn when he was 6, him sitting alone at the kids' table during Christmas while everyone else laughed in the dining room. Below it, in his handwriting, "This was the year you told me not to interrupt grown-up talk. So I sat by myself and learned how to be quiet." Another page held a photo. Me and Jonah sitting on our couch, both in pajamas, watching a movie. It was slightly blurred, clearly taken on a timer. He captioned it, "This is what family looks like when no one's trying to win." Then there was the birthday card he made for Jason 2 years ago, the one Jason had opened, rolled his eyes at, and tossed into the trash. Jonah had taken it out of the bin, taped it into the scrapbook. Next to it, he'd written, "You don't have to like me, but I hope one day you understand that kindness isn't weakness." Midway through the book was a page that stopped Dolores cold. It was a drawing of her. Face stern, arms crossed, eyes empty. Jonah had written above it, "I used to think you didn't smile because you were tired, but now I think it's because someone told you that softness was dangerous." Angela told me Dolores didn't speak for nearly 15 minutes after that. She just flipped page after page. The last section of the scrapbook was something else entirely. It was filled with entries Jonah had written, dated, sometimes months apart, addressed to her. Some were hopeful. Maybe next year she'll ask me something about school. Others were devastating. She looked right at me today and said nothing. I don't think I exist to her. And the final entry? It was short. "This is the last time I'll wait for her to change. I've decided I'll grow anyway." Angela said Dolores closed the book, placed it in her lap, and wept like she was crumbling. Not performative. Not manipulative. Just raw, unedited grief. The kind you don't show unless the mirror finally cracked, and you're left staring at the truth you spent your whole life burying. That evening, Dolores called me. I didn't pick up. I was still angry. Still protective. Still not sure what I'd say if I heard her voice try to shape Jonah's words into something she could survive. But she left a voicemail, and I wrote it down word for word. "Nina, I don't have any right to ask for time with him. I know that. But I need to say thank you. He gave me the only gift I've gotten in 20 years that actually meant something. I just didn't know how much it would hurt to receive it." She paused. Then, "Tell Jonah he made me feel something I thought I'd lost. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like to try." I didn't play the message for Jonah. Not then. Instead, I told him that Grandma had read the book, that it made her cry, that she said thank you. He didn't smile. He just nodded. "That's good," he said. "Do you want to talk to her?" "Not yet." Then he opened his own sketchbook and began drawing again. This time, it wasn't Dolores with a frown. It was himself, standing on a hill, sun behind him, no shadows, just light. That night, Jason called. For the first time ever. He said, "I didn't know about all of it. The letter, the book. I didn't know he kept all that inside." I didn't say much, just listened. He sounded different, like a kid realizing he's not the center of the world for the first time. 2 days later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a framed copy of Jonah's drawing, the one of the quiet Christmas table. Underneath it, in new handwriting, someone had written, "I see you now." It was New Year's Day when she showed up. The snow had come down thick overnight, covering the street in a soft, white hush. Jonah was in his room, building a paper model of a lighthouse, something he said he liked because it stays still but still helps people find their way. I was folding laundry when I heard the knock. 3 slow, hesitant taps. Not the kind of knock you make when you're sure you belong. I opened the door, and there she stood, Dolores Whitmore, my mother-in-law, the woman who once called me ornamental at my own wedding reception, the woman who had perfected coldness into an identity. But right now, she looked old, not just in age, in grief. She wore a long gray coat, one button missing near the hem. Her hands trembled slightly, uncovered in the cold. And her eyes, for the first time in years, didn't look through me. They looked at me. "I'm sorry to come without calling," she said. "You didn't." She nodded like she'd expected that. "I don't want to intrude. I'd like to speak to Jonah, if he'll let me." There was no demand in her voice. No entitlement. Just ask. And that made it harder to slam the door. I didn't answer right away. I just stepped back. Let the cold in. She didn't move. "He's in his room," I said. "I'll ask." She nodded again, then added, "If he says no, I'll go." It was the first boundary she'd ever respected. I knocked on Jonah's door. He looked up from his model, glasses slightly sliding down his nose. "It's Grandma," I said gently. "She's here. She wants to talk." He didn't flinch. Didn't ask why. Just asked, "Does she want to be forgiven?" I paused. "I don't think she knows what she wants yet, but I think she wants to listen." He set down his scissors, took a deep breath. "Okay." We all sat in the living room. No fireplace. No tea. Just 3 people, and an honesty that took up all the space between us. Dolores sat on the edge of the armchair like it might reject her. She held her hands together so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Jonah sat on the couch, across from her, legs crossed. Calm. Composed. It was silent for a long moment. Then Dolores began. I was raised in a house where emotions were things to be contained. My mother didn't believe in praise. My father didn't believe in softness. I learned that being distant meant being strong. Jonah didn't interrupt. She went on. I thought if I made everything proper, clean, sharp, no one could hurt me. So I did that to other people first. I didn't realize I was doing it to you. She looked at him directly. I didn't realize you were keeping track. That you noticed every time I turned away. Every time I looked at Jason longer than I looked at you. Jonah finally spoke. I notice a lot of things. But I didn't keep track to punish you. I kept track so I wouldn't start believing I imagined it. Dolores blinked hard. Nodded. I understand. And I'm sorry. Silence again. Real silence. Not avoidance. The kind that comes after truth, when no one rushes to fill the space. Then Jonah asked, why now? She answered without flinching. Because I read what you wrote. And I realized I've spent decades convincing myself I was strong. But I was just afraid. He looked at her for a long time. Then said, I don't think people who are afraid are weak. But I think people who are cruel because they're afraid need to stop. I watched this exchange like someone watching a snow globe being shaken and slowly settling. I didn't speak. Because this wasn't mine. It was Jonah's. Dolores reached into her coat and pulled something from her bag. A small wooden box. Not gift-wrapped. Just simple. She placed it on the coffee table. This was your grandfather's, she said. He gave it to me when Jonah's dad was born. I was going to give it to Jason. I was saving it for him. But he doesn't need it the way you do. Jonah opened it carefully. Inside was a pocket watch, old, silver, etched with the initials WH. It wasn't shiny or grand, but it was meaningful. On the inside of the cover, etched into the metal, you have time. Jonah stared at it for a moment, then whispered, thank you. Dolores stood, wobbled a bit. I got up to help her, but Jonah reached her first, offered his hand. She took it. Would it be all right if I stopped by again sometime? She asked him directly. He nodded. As long as you don't pretend nothing happened. I won't. After she left, Jonah turned to me. She meant it this time. You think so? Yeah. Her voice wasn't heavy. I didn't know what he meant by that, not exactly. But I believed him. Because sometimes kids feel truth before adults ever dare to speak it. Later that night, Jonah sat at his desk writing something. I peeked over his shoulder. Just a single sentence. Sometimes it takes breaking a heart to let the light in. It was exactly 1 year later when we returned to the Prescott house. This time, Jonah didn't carry a box of gifts. He didn't clutch his drawings or whisper that he hoped someone might finally see him. He walked in like a boy who had already been seen. The house looked different. Same walls. Same creaky banister. Same flickering porch light Dolores always claimed she'd fix and never did. But the energy? It was lighter. Angela opened the door and didn't do her usual fake smile. She hugged us, both of us, stiffly, but sincerely. Even Jason, now 13 and taller than me, gave Jonah a shy nod and a, hey, man, you want to play later? Jonah said yes, like it wasn't a big deal. But I saw his eyes. The flicker of surprise. The slow, cautious hope. Dolores was in the kitchen. Baking. Yes, baking. She had flour on her sweater and a smudge of cinnamon near her hairline. When she saw Jonah, she wiped her hands on a towel and came forward without hesitation. I made your gingerbread. The way you like it. With lemon zest. Jonah blinked. You remembered. I wrote it down, she said, right after last year. Then she did something I hadn't seen in 10 years. She crouched slowly, stiff knees and all, and hugged him. No fanfare. No big performance. Just arms around her grandson. We sat down to brunch at the long table that had once divided generations. This year, Jonah sat at the center, next to Dolores. After the meal, Dolores stood up awkwardly, cleared her throat. Before we open gifts, I'd like to give Jonah something first. He looked up, surprised. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small square box, wrapped carefully this time, tied with ribbon, gold paper with red twine. She handed it to him and stepped back. You don't have to like it, she said, but I want you to know why I'm giving it. Jonah unwrapped it quietly. Inside was a velvet pouch, and inside that, a locket, silver, ornate, old. He looked up, confused. This belonged to my mother, Dolores explained. She gave it to me when I turned 12. I kept it in a drawer for decades. I told myself I'd pass it down to someone who made me proud. Her voice shook. Last year, I didn't think I had anyone like that. But you changed my mind. Jonah opened the locket. Inside were two things, a tiny photo of him, one Dolores must have printed from my social media, and a folded slip of paper. He unfolded it slowly. It read, "Kindness is not weakness. Silence is not strength. And you are neither invisible nor small." Jonah stared at it, then folded it back into the locket, closed it gently. Everyone was quiet. Not awkward quiet, just still, like they all knew something real had just happened. Later, I found Jonah sitting by the window, the locket in his hands. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." "Do you believe her?" He thought for a long time, then nodded. "I think people can change, but only if someone shows them how." Angela came by with cocoa. Jason asked if Jonah wanted to go sledding later. Mark offered to drive them both. Small things, unremarkable things, but real, and that's what mattered. On the way home, Jonas said, "I didn't think I'd ever like this house again. And now, I don't like the house. I like the people inside it now." When we got home, he pulled out his sketch pad. The latest drawing? All of us sitting around a table. Dolores was smiling. Jason was handing Jonah a controller. Angela was laughing. And in Jonah's own caption at the bottom, "This year, the room didn't shrink when I walked in." We didn't find the letter until 3 days after Christmas. Jonah had kept the locket close, wearing it under his shirt during the day and setting it gently on his nightstand at night. He didn't open it often. I think part of him didn't want to wear down the moment, like unwrapping the same memory too many times. But on the third night, he came into the living room holding the velvet pouch again. "Mom," he said quietly, "I think there's something else in here." He handed it to me. I tipped the locket upside down and shook it lightly. A thin slip of yellowed paper fluttered out, folded small, like it had been pressed into that space long before the locket was ever meant to be a gift. Jonah reached for it. "Do you want to read it?" I asked. He shook his head. "You first." So I unfolded it, smoothed the fragile paper, and read it aloud. "Walter, I don't know when this will find you, if ever, but I need to speak to someone who once knew me before I hardened. Jonah, he reminds me of you. Not in your voice or your face, but in your heart. He listens like you did. Looks like he sees people the way they wish they could be seen. I've spent years confusing restraint for strength, silence for dignity, distance for protection, and I passed it down like a birthright to our children, and worse, to theirs. When I first read his letter, I wanted to destroy it, to call it dramatic, unfair, but I couldn't, because he didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse me. He just held up a mirror I've been avoiding since you died. I told myself I was the keeper of tradition, but really, I was just afraid of being soft again. He changed me. That boy. That quiet, too perceptive, too forgiving boy. And I wish you could have met him. Because I think he's what we were supposed to leave behind for the world. Asterisk, asterisk. Dolores, when I finished reading, the room was still. Jonah sat on the rug, knees pulled to his chest, just listening. After a long moment, he said, "She wrote that to my grandpa?" "Yeah." "So, she never expected anyone else to read it?" "No, I don't think so." He nodded slowly. "Then it's real. You believe her now?" "I think I believed her already," he said. "But now I know why." The next day, Jonah asked if we could go back to the Prescott's house. No occasion, no invitation, just to sit. Dolores was on the porch when we arrived, watering a wilted poinsettia with a chipped ceramic mug. She looked surprised, then relieved. Jonah handed her the letter. "I found this in the locket." Her face fell for a moment, panic, maybe, then softened. "I was never going to give you that." "I know." He didn't say it like an accusation. He said it like someone who understood. And then, after a long pause, he added, "Thank you for writing it." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you for changing me." That night, Jonah added one last drawing to his sketchbook. It was the same dining room table from the Christmas before, but this time, it had one extra figure seated at the head, a woman with silver hair, her expression soft and open, with her hands gently resting on the table, not crossed over her chest. And Jonah? He was laughing. In the caption, he wrote, "Sometimes the apology doesn't come as a word. Sometimes it's a letter left behind in the dark." Weeks passed, then months, and life went on. But the family didn't go back to the way it was. Jason and Jonah started hanging out after school. Angela offered to help with Jonah's science fair project. Dolores sent birthday cards early now, hand-signed, handwritten. She never apologized with flowers or trinkets. She just showed up, again and again. And as for Jonah, he grew taller. His voice deepened. But he never lost that gentleness, that core of quiet strength that cracked a dynasty of coldness. He became the lighthouse. Steady, still. A boy who lit the way, not with noise, but with truth. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it too.